A poor single mom was dragged out of her own sister's wedding until a millionaire walked in and called her his bride. The phone shattered the quiet of her small apartment. Laya glanced at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. It was Cassandra. She hadn't heard from her younger half-sister in months. She picked up, hesitant. "Laya," Cassandra said, her voice flat and businesslike. "I'm getting married. Next week." Laya paused. "I heard. Congratulations." "Yeah, thanks." Cassandra replied with absolutely no sincerity. "Look, we're short on staff for the reception. Figured I'd offer you a chance to work. You need the money, right?" Laya blinked, the words stinging. "Work? You want me to be staff at your wedding?" "Don't get dramatic," Cassandra said quickly. "You're not coming as a guest, obviously. Just help out. Bussing tables, clearing plates. You know, what you're used to." Laya swallowed the lump in her throat. "I see. Good. Arrive 2 hours early. Wear all black. Oh, and keep Noah at home. We don't need any distractions." The call ended before Laya could even respond. She sat still for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the dusty mirror above the sink. Her blonde hair was tied loosely at the back. She looked tired, lines of worry etching her face, making her look older than her 26 years. She turned to see Noah, her 2-year-old son, curled up on the faded couch, holding his stuffed rabbit fast asleep. Her heart clenched with a fierce, protective love. She didn't care about Cassandra's mockery. She didn't care about the humiliation of serving at her own sister's wedding. All she cared about was one small, desperate hope that Noah might, for a brief moment, glimpse the kind of warm family gathering he deserved to know existed. A week later, Laya showed up early, at the venue, just as she was told. The hall was a world away from her, bone extravagant and dressed in ivory drapes, golden candlelight, and the soft classical music echoing from a grand piano. She wore a plain black blouse and slacks, her hair pulled tightly into a severe bun. She felt like a ghost haunting the edges of a fairy tale. The event coordinator barely looked at her while handing her a name tag and pointing her toward the service station. The staff buzzed around her, setting up trays of champagne, flutes, and intricate appetizers. Laya moved silently through the motions, polishing glasses, folding crisp linen napkins. She kept her head down, her movements efficient and invisible. Cassandra walked by once, her makeup flawless, her laughter ringing out like the chime of expensive glass. She didn't even glance in Laya's direction. Later, during a short break, Laya found a quiet corner behind the kitchen doors and pulled the invitation from her pocket. The thick cream envelope had her name scrolled in small dismissive cursive at the bottom of a long list of instructions. She read the fine print again. Kitchen help. Arrive early. Her name wasn't on the guest list. She wasn't family. She was hired help. Laya's chest tightened. She folded the card slowly and slid it back into her pocket. Then she stood, adjusted her sleeves, and walked back into the reception hall. She was silent, invisible, but determined to hold on to her dignity, even if no one else there saw it. The reception hall shimmered with golden lights, crystal chandelier casting their glow over polished silverware and white linen-covered tables. Laya moved silently through the room, a shadow in her black server uniform. Her blonde hair was pulled into that tight bun, her posture straight, her steps careful and quiet. She adjusted a row of champagne glasses, making sure they were perfectly spaced, then folded the last napkin with precision. The clinking of silverware and the soft murmur of conversation created a strange symphony around her, what she was clearly not a part of. She kept her eyes low, her presence meant to be a ghost on the edge of her sister's perfect day. Just as she turned to retrieve a tray, a voice from behind interrupted the delicate rhythm of her quiet work. "Excuse me?" a woman asked politely. "Aren't you the bride's sister?" Laya froze. She hadn't expected to be recognized. She turned slowly to face the older woman, a distant relative maybe, one of their father's cousins. Before Laya could respond, Cassandra's voice rang out sharply from across the room. "She was," Cassandra said, approaching with a flute of champagne in hand and a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes. She used to be. Now she's just staff. A few guests nearby turned their heads. The room didn't fall silent, but the tension spread quickly like a spilled drink across white linen. Leia kept her mouth shut, her face a neutral mask even as her cheeks burned with shame. "Oh," the guest murmured, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't realize." "That's all?" "Right," Cassandra said, brushing a hand through her perfectly styled hair. "She's used to being overlooked, right, Leia?" Leia didn't respond. She turned back to her tray, but Gloria's voice, their mother's, cut through next, louder, firmer, echoing through the open space. "Frankly," Gloria said from her table, raising her glass slightly, "we'd all be better off if no one remembered her at all. Leia is the kind of mistake families try to forget." The air shifted. Conversations paused. Laughter faltered. Heads turned. Leia's hand trembled as she steadied the tray, her breath caught in her throat. For a brief, desperate second, she considered running. Just then, a small voice cried out, "Mama!" It was Noah. He had slipped from the back room, where one of the kind kitchen staff had agreed to watch him for a few hours. His chubby legs carried him across the dance floor as fast as he could manage, his little shoes squeaking on the polished marble. He wrapped his arms around her leg, looking up at her with a bright, innocent smile. Leia crouched down, scooped him into her arms, and pressed her cheek to his head, inhaling his sweet scent. The room burst into soft laughter, but it wasn't kind. "Oh, how precious," a woman said mockingly. "Staff and entertainment all in one. She even brought the kid to work," another added with a sneer. Gloria stood, placing her champagne flute down with a deliberate, sharp clink. "Can someone please remove that child before he ruins the decor? This is a wedding, not a daycare center." The murmurs grew louder, a chorus of judgment, layered with cruel mockery. Leia held Noah tighter. "Some people just don't know their place," Cassandra said loudly, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Leia rose to her feet slowly, still holding her son. Her eyes scanned the crowd. So many familiar faces now twisted by condescension and laughter. For a fleeting second she met her father's gaze. He looked away. She turned toward the kitchen, determined to leave with what little dignity she had left. But behind her, the whispers continued, sharp and cruel. "She should be ashamed. No wonder they don't speak of her. Did you hear? She doesn't even know who the father is." The laughter followed her as she walked, each step heavier than the last. But Leia didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She simply held her son close and walked through the noise, silent but unbroken. Leia moved through the bustling kitchen with the grace of someone used to going unnoticed. In her hand was a paper napkin, folded around a small piece of wedding cake she had quietly rescued from a half-eaten plate. It was just a corner, a little bit of frosting, but it was enough. Enough for Noah to feel included. Enough to make him smile. She pushed open the heavy staff lounge door and stepped inside. The space was dim and quiet, a sharp contrast to the blinding grandeur outside. Noah was curled up on a small bench in the corner, hugging his stuffed rabbit. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "Hey, sweetheart," Leia whispered, kneeling down. "Look what Mama brought you." She unfolded the napkin carefully and placed the cake in his small hands. He squealed softly with excitement and dug in, frosting smearing happily on his fingers. Leia watched him with a tender smile, her heart aching with the bittersweet beauty of the moment. Just then the door creaked open. Behind her, a man in a sharp navy blue suit stepped inside. He was middle-aged, clearly a guest, though not someone Leia recognized. He paused, watching the scene with a gentle expression. "That's your boy?" he asked softly. Leia nodded, standing slowly. "Yes, sir." "He's adorable," the man said. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded $100 bill, offering it to her with a kind expression. "Here, buy him something sweet later." Leia blinked. Then she shook her head. "Thank you, sir, but no." The man looked surprised. "It's just a gift. I'm Sorry, she said softly, her voice filled with quiet strength. But my dignity is not for sale, not even when we're hungry. Her words hung in the air, clear and proud. The man's expression shifted from pity to respect. He nodded, tucked the bill away, and then exited without another word. Unbeknownst to either of them, a wedding photographer had been walking past the open doorway and snapped a photo of that exact moment. The mother, the child, the money refused. He later posted it online with a simple, powerful caption, "Some things can't be bought. Remember her face." By the time the EE photo began to spread across social media, Laya had returned to her duties. Cassandra found out within the hour when a bridesmaid showed her the photo on her phone. Within minutes, she was seething. "She made me look heartless," Cassandra hissed. "She's hijacking my wedding with her sob story." She stormed into the lounge where Leia was gently wiping Noah's mouth. "You think you're some kind of saint now?" Cassandra snapped, the poor little waitress who turned down a tip for her bastard child. "You're humiliating me!" Leia stood, shielding Noah instinctively. "I didn't ask for any attention. I was just feeding my son." "Well, you've fed him enough," Cassandra growled. "Get out. You've done enough damage before." Laya could answer. Noah, scared by the shouting, ran toward her and tripped over the edge of a rug near down the doorway. In an instant, he collided with a passing waiter, knocking over a full tray of ice water. A cascade of clear liquid splashed directly across Cassandra's pristine white designer gown. There was a collective gasp from the hallway. Cassandra stared down at the massive spreading stain, speechless for half a second. Then she screamed, "My dress! It's ruined! This is a $12,000 gown!" Gloria came marching in like a general. "What happened?" "She threw water on me," Cassandra shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Laya. "I didn't." Leia tried to explain. "She's sabotaging everything," Cassandra wailed. Gloria's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. "Enough! Get her out of here." A pair of venue security guards approached. "No, please," Leia begged, backing away while holding Noah close. "You and that child have no place here," Gloria snapped. "Drag them out, now." One guard grabbed Leia's arm, roughly. The other tried to take Noah from her. Laya twisted away, stumbling. "Mama!" Noah screamed, tears bursting from his eyes. Laya fell hard onto the marble floor. Her elbow slammed against the sharp edge of a chair, tearing her sleeve. Blood smeared across her arm. The rip in her uniform exposed her scraped raw skin. Gasps echoed around the room, but no one stepped forward to help. "Keep moving!" Gloria barked. The guards pulled her up, dragging her toward the exit. Noah clung to her, wailing in terror. And in that brutal moment, in that image of a mother, bloodied and broken, her child screaming in her arms, every cruel whisper became reality. Laya was no longer just ignored. She was being thrown out, cast aside like trash. But fate hadn't finished writing the story of this night. Because just as the grand doors creaked open and she was pushed into the cool night air, someone else was walking up the steps, and he had seen everything. The heavy doors groaned open as the guards shoved Leia and Noah toward the exit. Her hair was disheveled, her uniform torn at the elbow where blood still trickled, and her arms trembled as she held her crying son. Just as one of the guards reached to open the last door to the street, a sharp, commanding voice cut through the chaos like a bolt of lightning. "Do not touch her." The words echoed with an authority that stopped everyone in their tracks. Everyone froze. The guards turned first, followed by Gloria, Cassandra, and a dozen wide-eyed guests craning their necks toward the entrance. A sleek black luxury sedan had just pulled up outside, its headlights still glowing. From the back seat emerged a tall, impeccably dressed man in a charcoal gray suit. His presence seemed to silence the very air itself. "Daniel Rhodes," the name murmured through the room, like a ripple in still water. He stepped forward, his expression calm but with an unmistakable fire in his eyes. His sharp jawline and dark, intense eyes gave him a magnetic, almost dangerous elegance. Guests parted like the Red Sea as He walked through them, ignoring the stares and whispers until he reached Laya and Noah. He knelt beside her, his voice suddenly soft. "Are you all right?" She looked up, breathless, still, reeling from the shock. "Daniel, why are you here?" "I came as soon as I saw the post. I should have been here sooner." He took the silk pocket square from his suit and gently wrapped it around her bleeding elbow. Then, without hesitation, he lifted a sobbing Noah into his arms and turned to face the crowd. Noah clung to him as if he had always known this man's comfort. Daniel looked at the guards. "Let her go. Now." The guards hesitated, looking to Gloria for direction. Gloria stepped forward, indignant. "Excuse me, who exactly do you think you are? This is a private event." He stood tall, his voice cool but forged in steel. "I'm Daniel Rhodes, founder of Rhodes Capital. I'm the man who funded this venue, the floral company, the caterers, the wine selection, and the honeymoon suite. Every single contract tied to this wedding bears my signature." The silence that followed was deafening. Gloria blinked, her face paling. I didn't know you were attending. I was supposed to arrive earlier, but my flight was delayed. And yet somehow I arrived just in time to witness you throw the mother of my future child out like garbage," Cassandra gasped. "Future child?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Yes, Laya is the woman I love, and if anyone here has the audacity to insult her again, I will personally ensure every vendor pulls out of this wedding, effective immediately." The room erupted with shocked gasps. "You wouldn't dare," Gloria whispered, her face drained of all color. Daniel turned his piercing gaze on her, dead serious. "Try me," he then turned to the stunned guests, his voice now louder, steadier. "Let me be very clear. Laya is not just some waitress. She is a survivor, a mother, a woman who has worked harder than any of you could possibly imagine to give her son a life of dignity. She didn't crash this wedding. She was invited to work by a sister who treated her like filth, and yet she still came because she wanted her son to believe in the idea of family, even if no one here treated her like one." Laya's lips parted, tears finally rising in her eyes. Not from humiliation, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Protection. Daniel faced Cassandra next. "And you let your own sister serve drinks at your wedding, then turn on her in front of all your guests. That's not just cruel. That's disgraceful," Cassandra stammered, her voice brittle. "You don't understand." "No, he interrupted, his voice firm. "You will. Because this ends now." He turned back to Laya and held out his hand. "Come with me." Laya stared at him, stunned. She stood slowly, her hands still, trembling. Daniel handed Noah back to her, gently, and together they turned to leave. As they passed Gloria, she hissed, under her breath, "You're ruining everything." Daniel glanced at her, his eyes as cold as ice. "No, I'm saving the only part of the night that ever mattered," and with that, they stepped outside into the fresh, cool air, leaving behind the glittering ballroom full of stunned silence and the ruins of Cassandra's perfect wedding. Daniel led Laya and Noah into the quiet of the courtyard, away from the murmurs that still buzzed behind the ballroom doors. The sky had darkened, the first stars glinting faintly overhead, but the courtyard lights bathed them in a warm golden hue. Daniel offered Laya a seat on a stone bench, and she sat down. Slowly, Noah resting his head against her chest, his thumb finding its way to his mouth. She looked up at Daniel, still completely dazed. "Why did you come? Why did you say all of that?" He knelt before her, his voice low and steady. "Because it's the truth, and because I owe you more than you'll ever know." She shook her head, confused. "You don't owe me anything," he smiled faintly. "Yes, I do. You just don't remember." Laya frowned, searching her memory. Daniel looked toward the ground for a moment as if gathering his courage, then met her eyes again. "A year ago I walked into this very restaurant, not as Daniel Rhodes, not as a millionaire. I came dressed in a borrowed chef's coat and hat, part of an internal audit. It was my version of undercover, boss. I was testing staff, integrity, empathy, humanity. Most people ignored me. Some were rude. A few were polite, but only one person saw me. Really saw me. Laya's lips parted, slightly as a flicker of memory sparked. You, he continued, his voice full of warmth. You saw a tired man on a late shift. You brought me a glass of water, without me even asking. And when you saw me struggling with my tray, you split your lunch with me. A simple sandwich, half a muffin. You didn't know who I was. You didn't even ask my name. I don't remember, she whispered, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. He smiled gently. That's exactly why it mattered. Laya sat still, the quiet tears now flowing freely. Daniel looked around, then rose to his feet and turned back toward the ballroom, raising his voice so the crowd just beyond the threshold could hear him clearly. You all see me as a man of success, power, and money, but none of that ever gave me peace. For years I was surrounded by luxury, but I was hollow inside. It was a tired woman in a stained apron sharing her meal with someone she thought was a struggling kitchen worker who reminded me what it truly means to be human. She gave me something no business deal, no merger, no empire ever could. He looked back at Laya, his eyes shining. She gave me trust. She gave me hope. Inside the hall, the tension shifted. Gloria, standing rigid near the doors, opened her mouth to object, but her voice trembled and failed. Cassandra, red-faced and furious, stepped forward. What is this? Some kind of dramatic performance? She was nothing before tonight. You think she's going to become some kind of, what, a millionaire wife? Seriously? Her laugh was sharp and bitter. She doesn't belong in our world. Daniel turned. Slowly, his voice calm but unyielding, and that's exactly why. She deserves it more than anyone. She doesn't care about status. She never once tried to climb an social ladder. She helped someone, without expecting anything in return. She is already richer in the things that truly matter than most of the people in that room. Cassandra scoffed. You're throwing away everything for her, Daniel. Stepped forward, his gaze locked on. Laya, I'm choosing the one person who made me feel human again. If that's throwing something away, then good riddance, the murmurs. Inside the hall began to shift, again. No longer whispers of judgment, but of dawning admiration. One by one, a few guests stood. Then more. A slow ripple of applause began to build until the whole room was clapping. Laya looked through the open doors, in disbelief. People, elegant, polished people, were clapping for her. Suddenly, the manager of the restaurant emerged from the crowd, moving quickly toward them. A man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and a stiff bow tie stopped before Laya, his eyes full of shame. Miss Laya, he said solemnly, bowing his head slightly. Please accept my sincerest apologies. I did not recognize your importance both to Mr. Rhodes and to this place. It was my failure, she blinked, unsure of what to say. Had I known, he continued, I would never have allowed you to be treated that way. You are clearly the most important person in our owner's life. Laya's voice wavered. I don't need titles or special treatment. I just wanted to feed my son. Daniel stepped beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. And in doing that, you reminded me who it means to truly live. The applause swelled again, echoing across the courtyard like music. But Laya no longer heard it. She looked up at Daniel, truly looked at him. And for the first time in years, she smiled. A real, genuine smile. One born not of relief, but of finally being seen and chosen. Daniel gently led Laya and little Noah back into the grand reception hall. They walked past the stunned guests, the marble pillars, the scattered petals, and the orchestra that had long since fallen silent. The whispers faded as all eyes turned to them. This was the mother once dismissed, now returning like a queen with her prince in her arms and a king at her side. Without a word, Daniel guided her to the head table, to the place of honor once reserved for Gloria. He pulled out the ornate chair, helped Laya sit, and then lifted Noah onto her lap. The symbolism was powerful and lost on no one. Gloria, still lingering near the stage looked as though she'd been physically slapped. Her seat, her power, now belonged to the woman she had called a disgrace. Daniel stepped aside and picked up the microphone from the podium. He tapped it once, the feedback crackling lightly. "I'd like to give the floor to someone who deserves it far more than I do," said simply, turning and gesturing toward Laya. Laya's eyes widened, but Daniel gave her a gentle, encouraging nod. She took a deep breath, then stood, slowly. Her torn sleeve had been patched with Daniel's silk handkerchief. Her cheeks were flushed, but her chin was held high. She walked up to the podium and looked out at the guests who had laughed at her, ignored her, and whispered behind her back. And then she looked at Noah, who reached for her with a gummy smile. "My name is Laya," she began, her voice steady despite the trembling she felt inside. "Some of you may know me as the waitress or the kitchen help. Some of you may know me as the woman who was asked to serve at her own sister's wedding." She paused. No one moved. "I've been called a burden, a stain, a failure, but let me tell you what I truly am." She looked down at Noah, her voice softening with immeasurable love. "I am a mother, and this boy, this beautiful, bright boy, is not my shame. He is my light. He is my reason for waking up every single morning, no matter how cold, how hungry, or how alone I felt." Noah clapped once, then giggled. A few smiles broke out among the guests. "I'm not here to chase a wealth," Leia continued, "or titles, or revenge. I don't need to sit at your tables to know my own worth. But today, just for once, I ask for your respect. Not pity, not favor, just the simple acknowledgement that I am a human being, a woman and a mother. And that is more than enough." A hush fell over the hall. It was different now. Not discomfort, but reverence. At the far end of the table, Mr. Davis, Laya's father, rose slowly to his feet. His face, so long passive and neutral, was crumpled with emotion. His eyes were red. His lips trembled as he approached the podium. "I should have protected you," he said, his voice cracking. "I let others decide how I treated my own daughter. I was weak. And I'm sorry, Leia. From the depths of my soul, I am so sorry." Leia blinked, shocked. For years he had stood by silently, while others broke her spirit piece by piece. And now here he was, breaking down in front of everyone, his apology, raw and long overdue. She gave him a slow single nod. Nothing more needed to be said. Noah, now squirming in Daniel's arms, reached out toward the microphone. Daniel chuckled and handed it to him for just a moment, and then it happened. Noah leaned close to the mic, gripped it clumsily with both chubby hands, and blurted out, "Daddy!" The word echoed through the silent hall like a cannon blast. Leia froze. Daniel's eyes widened, then softened, glistening with tears. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, some shocked, others deeply moved. Cassandra scoffed, but it was too late. The sound was drowned out by applause that followed almost instantly. Noah wiggled happily, his arms outstretched toward Daniel, completely unaware of the storm he had just quieted with a single, perfect word. Daniel stepped forward, took Noah into his arms, and kissed the boy's forehead. "He's got perfect timing," he whispered to Leia, his voice thick with emotion. As the applause continued, Daniel took Leia's hand, their fingers lacing together naturally. And in that moment, under the golden chandeliers and flickering candlelight, something greater than ceremony or spectacle filled the room. Something real. Something that looked and felt just like love. 1 week after the wedding disaster, the full video from the reception was broadcast on national television, edited from several angles: guests, cell phones, the venue security footage, and the wedding photographers' clips. It told a story that gripped the country. It wasn't a story of romance between the bride and groom, but of cruelty, courage, and an unexpected hero, a waitress with a torn sleeve, and a little boy who called a billionaire daddy. The segment aired on morning talk shows, evening news specials, and went viral in TikTok recaps. By midday, hashtags began trending. Justice for Leia, a mother with honor. From waitress to queen. The internet erupted in a title wave of support. Comment sections overflowed with empathy, outrage, and admiration. Women shared their own stories of being belittled and underestimated. Men praised Daniel's fierce defense and quiet humility. Mothers everywhere saw themselves in Laya's tearful speech and unwavering love, and the backlash for those who deserved it was swift and brutal. Gloria, once a staple on local charity boards and high society fundraisers, found herself blacklisted overnight. Sponsors pulled out from her. Fashion events, philanthropic contracts were terminated. Her publicist quit. Her once perfect facade crumbled as video clips of her sneering at Laya were reposted with captions like, "Meet the real evil stepmother." Cassandra fared no better. Investigative bloggers digging into her sudden rise in the influencer world uncovered forged transcripts from an elite culinary school. Brand deals vanished. Her fan base abandoned her in droves. An interview she gave to defend herself only made things worse as she came off as dismissive, entitled, and bitter. The world had made up its mind. Cassandra was not the star of the wedding. She was the villain. Meanwhile, Laya's life transformed. Daniel, true to his word, launched the Laya Grace Foundation, scholarship program for single mothers pursuing vocational training or higher education. Women like Laya, he said in the press release, deserve more than charity. They deserve opportunity, dignity, and a chance to rewrite their own stories. Laya, overwhelmed but deeply moved, decided to turn her quiet strength into something more. She started a small YouTube channel, Meals with Mama Laya, where she shared easy, affordable recipes for struggling families. Her first video, with Noah sitting on the counter, giggling as she stirred soup, got over 2 million views in a week. Her second video opened with the words, "I used to scrub pots in a mama's kitchen. Now I cook for people who need comfort, hope, and love." Brands began to reach out, not for exploitative deals, but for collaborations rooted in authenticity. Moms across America subscribed, not because of the viral fame, but because they saw something real. Woman who had once been just like them. Daniel stood quietly behind her, success never overshadowing her light. He appeared in only a few videos, usually in the background chopping vegetables or washing dishes, occasionally making Noah laugh with funny faces. Laya became more than a symbol. She became a movement. From waitress to warrior, from forgotten sister to beloved mother, from humiliation to honor. And in every comment section, every media headline, every message of support, one thing was clear. The world had watched a woman rise, and she did not rise alone. She carried a son on her hip, a heart full of grace and a love that could turn even the coldest ballroom into a home. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden sheen across the quaint garden behind the restaurant where it had all begun. A place once filled with the clatter of dishes and whispered orders was now transformed into something sacred. Fairy lights twinkled gently between the tree branches, and the scent of blooming jasmine danced through the late summer air. There were no white doves, no designer gowns, no red carpets or celebrity photographers. There were just 20 or so people gathered in simple wooden chairs, forming a circle of warmth around Laya, Daniel, and little Noah. Laya stood beneath a modest arch made of ivy and wildflowers, her blonde hair in soft waves, a simple linen dress hugging her frame. She wore no veil, no jewels, just a quiet glow in her eyes that had nothing to do with makeup and everything to do with peace. Daniel wore a navy blue suit, his sleeves rolled up just slightly, his boutonniere handpicked by Noah. That morning, a single crooked daisy. As he watched Laya approach, hand in hand with her son, he swore he had never seen anything more perfect in his entire life. The officiant gave a gentle nod, and a hush fell over the small gathering. But before the ceremony could begin, Noah, with determined little steps and a serious look on his face, walked up to Daniel holding a tiny satin pillow. On it, tied with a simple ribbon, were 2 plain silver bands. The guests chuckled softly, some already wiping away tears. Daniel bent down on one knee, not because tradition asked it of him, but because his heart demanded it. He looked up at Laya, took her hand and whispered, "I know you never needed saving. I know you were strong long before I ever showed up. But I also know that from the moment I saw you, again, you've been the heartbeat I didn't know I was missing." Laya's lips trembled, her free hand covering her heart. "You don't need a fancy title. You've never asked for a single thing. But if you'll have me, I would be the most honored man inside the world to call you my wife. Not because I can offer you riches, but because you've already given me everything I could ever want." A soft wind rustled through the leaves, and Noah giggled as he sat cross-legged in the grass, watching them. Laya wiped a tear from her cheek and dropped to her knees to meet him. "So she and Daniel were eye to eye. You gave us a safe place," she said, her voice full of emotion. "But more than that, you gave my son someone to look up to, and you gave me someone to lean on, not because I'm weak, but because even the strongest women need a soft place to fall." She leaned in and kissed him, a kiss that was gentle, grateful, and whole. The officiant smiled and stepped forward. "By the power of love, of second chances, and of the fierce strength of family, I now pronounce you partners for life." The guests rose in applause, not a thunderous roar, but a sound that was full and warm, like gentle rain on parched soil. Behind them, near the garden gate, stood a small wooden sign, newly carved. It read, "Laya's Table, where dignity is always on the menu." It had been Daniel's idea to turn the garden into a community kitchen, where single mothers could gather, learn, cook, and eat together, without fear of judgment. But he had insisted on naming it, after the woman who had once scraped frosting off of plates in silence and had now become a voice for thousands. As the sun slipped behind the city skyline, the newlyweds danced, barefoot on the grass, with Noah running happy circles around them, his laughter ringing out into the warm evening like the sweetest music of all. There was no orchestra, no paparazzi, just one family born not from perfection but from resilience. And as the stars began to appear overhead, Leah looked at her son, then at her husband, and whispered softly to herself, This is everything." And so, from a kitchen corner to a garden filled with light, Laya's journey reminds us all that dignity is not something given by status, but something earned through love, courage, and unshakable grace. She was once invisible. Now she is unforgettable. Because sometimes it's not the most glamorous wedding that makes the headlines. It's the one that heals the heart. If this story moved you, inspired you, or brought even a single tear to your eye, don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. We're dedicated to bringing you true stories of resilience, redemption, and the kind of love that truly changes lives. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.